As you've heard, my name is Azmaira Alibhai. I'm the Faith and Ecosystems Coordinator at the United Nations Environment Program, and I work directly with Dr. Iyad Abu Mogli, who is the founder and the director of the initiative, who sends his regards and regrets for not being with you today. But I'd like to think that he sent me in his stead to share with you exactly what UISG and many of the other organizations sitting at this table today can do to work better with us and with UNEP. As I mentioned, I'm responsible for the implementation of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, but my work extends to more than just ecosystems. And as you've said, this is precisely because all the triple planetary crisis, the crisis of climate, of nature and biodiversity loss, and of pollution are so interlinked. I also have the distinct pleasure this year of supporting the development of Faith for Earth's new strategy for engagement, which is a 5-year strategy that accompanies a name change from an initiative to a coalition and all the wonderful things that it brings. When women share their stories, their experiences, expressing the disproportionate effects of the triple planetary crisis, we are reminded we do not learn because that is already well established, but we are reminded of how pivotal women are, putting faces behind the science, and firstly at a local level, and secondly to understand what is at risk if we do not act now, and as a result of inadequate engagement as seen in political and social contexts. I will not repeat any of the points said by the previous speakers. But as I mentioned, I will talk about how you can better engage with us. And this is a conversation that we've had with Eleanor previously. But I would again like to reiterate our support in reaching out and encouraging more people, new faces, to dialogue with us on what the best way forward is and through the strategic position that we hold within UNEP. The first is partnerships. Nothing new. They are the bedrock of an effective process of engagement, and strategic partnerships with many membership organizations are even more so. It's been 6 years since the Faith for Earth initiative began, and our results are the product of mutual learning and cooperation that has helped us to form an understanding of the strengths of our partners, as well as the opportunities to engage to continue to deliver high quality results. And of course, I can say with certainty that the way in which we do business, the way in which we engage, are intended to do just that, deliver high quality results with our partners. The global community, as I've seen, is hungry for the voice of women faith leaders, both social, religious, private, political. And in 2020 and 2021, Faith for Earth co-organized workshops with CEDA on women and the environment that resulted in what we now know and have is the Faith for Earth Coalition Gender Strategy. So that's one very tangible thing that we can take away from my remarks today, is that this gender strategy is a point of engagement specifically in this nexus. Faith for Earth offers a council of women faith leaders that we hope to launch this year as a neutral convening platform under the auspices of UNEP to coordinate on common objectives, co-created objectives, and network with other like-minded FPOs over critical gender-sensitive issues. And as we discussed in the break with one of the fellow speakers here, is that there's no need to replicate the existing structures, and indeed that makes no logical sense to me or to UNEP. But the point is here that if we can find what the missing piece is in the nexus between faith, environment, science, and policy, and present that to you in a consumable mechanism, which we are calling the Women Faith Leaders Council, then that is precisely what we will do. not with the intention of replicating anything, and as is important, but with the intention of moving forward in our agenda. And when I say our, it's not just UNEP, it's yours as well. The second way that I think we can be useful to you is through a mechanism for effective multilateralism. And you may know that UNEP's governing body is called the United Nations Environment Assembly. It's the highest level decision-making body for the environment. But if I may pose to you that this begins on a local and a national level first, before we can reach the global processes and mechanisms. So inasmuch as there is a need for women faith leaders at a global level, our experience at UNEA and at the various COPs show us that policy and advocacy efforts of individual programs ought to begin in a local or in a national context where you are having these essential conversations with your environment minister, with the responsible ministry involved and represented at bodies like UNEA. Why? Because faith organizations usually clustered under the NGO major group have just one seat at the table, whereas each member state at UNEA have one seat. So you're talking about 193 opportunities to share your advocacy points, the work that you're doing with representatives of governments, and have that integrated into UNEA resolutions, which is even more important. At the very least, faith-based organizations must be aware of national level positions and interests, as well as regional, and the importance of engaging multiple stakeholders. And so my question to UISG and many of the organizations present here today is, are you engaged with your national or local government representative? And what we see at UISG is it's very unique for, the UISG partnership is very unique in the sense that, in the sense of your relationship with the Holy See that has observer status with UNEP and at UNEA. To achieve this, as you pointed out, an internal stocktake is essential to influence any given network, particularly at the grassroots level. It's monumentally important to inform that organization's capacity to engage on the environment and climate-related matters, whether this is thematic or regional. Storytelling, the voice and the impact of the triple planetary crisis, its disproportionate effects, highlighting local actions, enhancing knowledge sharing, these are some of the efforts that complement effective policy advocacy at all levels. At Faith for Earth, we've been very deliberate in trying to introduce, but as the previous speaker said, Professor Fabio, that it's not, religion isn't explicitly mentioned in the Sustainable Development Goals. However, through our advocacy within the organization, UNEP's medium-term strategy has in multiple places the need for strategically engaging with faith-based organizations. And so there is an opportunity here, not just through us, but with the organization as a whole, with our support as UNEP, to be more engaged not only at UNEA, but on the different thematic areas such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Next year, in February and March 2024, the theme for UNEA 6 is effective, inclusive, and sustainable multilateral actions to tackle climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And alongside UNEA, Faith for Earth convenes the Faith for Earth Dialogue. I'm sure we can be more creative in the names going forward, but that's what I have for you today. And this is an official side event of UNEA, and it's an opportunity on environment and climate-related matters for different faith organizations, working in them to share not only with the converted, with other faith organizations, but with the UNEA major groups, the different ones, business, with women, with youth, to share with them what the faith network is working on, as well as the delegates that will be present. And I've been tasked with the incredibly difficult but also challenging responsibility at UNEA 6 in trying to get the policymakers present to engage in the conversations. The last UNEA 5.2, we were happy to have the government of Norway be part of many of the discussions, but as I mentioned, there's 193 opportunities for us to share these messages with the policymakers. And perhaps at UNEA may be too late, which is another point that is critically important to note. But the process for engaging in the Faith for Earth dialogue or at UNEA has to begin as soon as the previous one ends. And just to note that we have mentioned to UISG that in order to attend, that an organization must be accredited. So you're very kind in giving me just a few more seconds to wrap up. As I mentioned that in terms of thinking about next steps, the Women Faith Leaders Council may be an important point for you to note, and that we are already engaged with you on, that we have several thematic working groups on climate, on pollution, especially in working towards the INC2 that's coming up in July, as well as the biodiversity thematic working group, as well as encouraging other organizations to attain accreditation, not for the purpose of the status that it provides, but for the purpose of being intimately connected with the CPR, the Committee of Permanent Representatives. And these are the representatives of the member states. And with that, thank you.